Former Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini will be sentenced on the 1st of April. This was after she was found guilty of perjury by the Johannesburg Magistrate's Court yesterday. Dlamini had been accused of lying under oath at an inquiry looking into the SASSA grants debacle, a charge that she pleaded not guilty to. So let's unpack what perjury charges mean in the broader scheme of things and what the implications are. We're joined by legal analyst, advocate Romeo Nthambeleni, and Dr. Dale Mckinley also joins us. He's with the Right2Know campaign. Both of our guests, thanks very much indeed for your time. Advocate Nthambeleni, I want to begin with you this morning because we need some clarity around what it means to be found guilty of perjury. This is not just lying, is it?
Thank you and good morning, Michelle. And in the most elementary explanation of what perjury is to a non-law person is just lying under oath in proceedings where a person has taken oath not to actually lie, and that is what is precisely the case in this matter. Yeah, it's lying, but lying under oath, which is a very important distinction to make. In terms of the sanctions in general that are imposed for such a criminal conviction, what are we looking at here? Yeah, you have a direct imprisonment, Michelle, and you also have an option of fine. And the challenge that we have here is that we're dealing with a repeat offender. You must not forget that she was once convicted in Parliament for the Travelgate scandal, if you remember very well. So I think that will be a challenge to try and persuade the magistrate and the court that she is remorseful and she's the first-time offender when the case is actually showing otherwise. Yeah.
Dr. Dale Mckinley is with the Right2Know campaign. Dr. Mckinley, it's the fact that the former minister lied, but that I suppose she also pleaded not guilty to the charge, saying that she didn't remember giving false information in that 2017 inquiry.
Yeah, it's somewhat predictable, I think, if one looks at the behavior of the ex-minister and some of her colleagues as well during that period of time. There's always a deniability. It's always don't remember, So in this case, I think where there's a degree of satisfaction, I think, from the public is that somebody finally has been held accountable, and that's exactly what the NPA was arguing yesterday in court, was that the principle here is accountability. If it doesn't matter whether you're lying under oath or whether you've committed another kind of crime, it's a crime. And crime, there must be some kind of consequence. So I think that the message here, which people have been baying for a long time, which is we want to see someone take responsibility in a meaningful way. And this, we don't know what the sentence will be, but at least from the ruling, I think that threshold has now at least been crossed.
For people who might be arguing that the false information that the court has now found Bathabile Dlamini to have given to that 2017 inquiry, that kind of lying was, as we now know, not a once-off, but that it was a victimless crime, it's also not true.
No, of course it wasn't, because the circumstances under which the lying took place were about the payment of grants. So if you remember, the cash paymaster system had been replaced and SASSA was going to take over. And this was about, basically delivering on her mandate. So it was fundamentally about not doing her job. And when she was caught out and tried to, on these work streams that they weren't reporting to her, and she lied and said, no, they weren't, and I wasn't responsible. It's a classic case. You just mentioned ex-President Zuma going again to the Supreme Court. This kind of a strategy, which is to constantly deny and string out the legal process until you've exhausted either the public or someone else's purse. And I think in this case, the end of the road for Dlamini, at least in the context of being found guilty, is fundamentally important. It's not about whether she gets sentenced to 2 years or whether she gets a massive fine. It's the fact that she has to pay for what she did.
Yeah, I want to come back to the issue that you've just brought up in that question over whether it is the end of the road for Dlamini insofar as her political career is concerned, Dr. Mckinley. So stand by for that. But sure. Romeo Nthambeleni, the issues around the justice system treating everyone as equal before the law. Many legal analysts, people who work as civil society watchdogs, really applauding the court, saying that this is proof that the judicial system is acting in this manner. Everyone is equal before the law.
Absolutely, Michelle. And I think what is important is what you have raised in this discussion relating to remorse, because that works when we are dealing with the issues of sentencing and conviction, to say once you admit that you are wrong, then the court might look at you with a different eye. But if you are emboldened in your behavior and continue to say that you're not guilty when the facts are actually pointing otherwise, then we have a problem when we deal with sentencing in terms of actually not giving you a non-custodial sentence. So it becomes problematic, and the arms of the law, as you have actually said, although it might take you the longest of actually times, they actually spin, and this is what is precisely happening in this case ultimately.
So arguments in aggravation and mitigation of sentence happening on the 1st of April, I understand. Advocate Nthambeleni, is it too late at this stage for Bathabile Dlamini to come forward and say, I'm actually sorry, I did not give the full truth during that 2017 inquiry?
This is precisely what I'm saying now, Michelle, to say how you start, it's going to ultimately determine how you finish. If there was an admission, we could be talking a different story altogether. The resources of the state wouldn't have been dragged out to try and convict her. Then now, she has said that she was not guilty, and then now she's being found guilty. So the prosecution will be arguing the harshest of the sentence. Yeah. And I've given you an example, and I said we are not dealing with an innocent situation. There was a past conviction where there was a conviction on almost similar charges of travel gate, and it's not going to actually help the situation. The state will definitely argue for a custodial sentence and not an option of fine, to say they want to set an example, and then the benchmark has been lowered for quite a time, the longest of time now. At least now there must be an example that is set out to those people that are working in public, that have got a responsibility to deliver what the Constitution says they must deliver to the South Africans. And this should be an opportunity for a direct imprisonment sentence.
Yeah, the NPA arguing already that there is a trend of dishonesty insofar as Bathabile Dlamini is concerned. Dr. Dale Mckinley, insofar as this being the end of the road for the former minister, insofar as her political career is concerned, I mean, according to the Constitution, it doesn't automatically bar someone from occupying, let's say, being a member of the National Assembly. It's only those, in very particular circumstances, convicted of an offence and sentenced to more than 12 months imprisonment without the option of a fine. So, I mean, it may well not be the end of the road.
Yeah, it might not be the end of the road for her as the ANC Women's League president. I think that's really the prize for her. I mean, it's coming up, the conference is coming up, the elections, that's her power seat. And you could tell by the people that were at the court, the RET faction, Carl Niehaus, Tony Ngeni, and so forth, that's the end game for them, is that they want her to continue to play that role. So I would expect certainly that she would maybe hear from her, that she might get through that gap. But in terms of her, unless Ramaphosa loses at the next conference and the RET faction takes over, when I say the end of the road, I mean in terms of high political office. This was a minister. This was someone who was at the height of the government. I don't think, unless the ANC battle is lost, as I said, from the Ramaphosa side, that she's going to get through that door again. But I think the question also is, if you remember, there has to be life after politics. And when one has a particular track record and you've been convicted, it's going to be harder for her to translate her political office into private office in many cases as well. So irrespective of what the actual sentence is going to be, I think what I'm trying to say is that Bathabile Dlamini as a political force is probably waning.
Would you have liked, in the wake of that decision in the courts yesterday, to have heard something from President Cyril Ramaphosa?
I think we all would. I mean, I think the frustration that many of us have with the president is his silence on many of these matters, and he just sort of hides in the shadows and waits till it goes away. And want to see, to say this is exactly what should happen, to come out and be strong about this. And he's talked about his anti-corruption agenda, cleaning the house, so forth and so on. Well, step up and say this is exactly what we need. There's many, many other cases that are going to be coming. out of the hearings, and obviously out of the Zondo report. So this is just the start. And so if President Ramaphosa wants to get really behind this right now and get up into the front of things, he needs to say to people, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Our courts are working. Everybody's equal before the law. It doesn't matter who you are, and we won't tolerate that kind of behavior. If he begins to say that publicly, then I think the train that we've been promised that's going to move will move a little bit faster.
Dr. Dale Mckinley with the Right2Know campaign. Advocate Romeo Nthambeleni is a legal analyst. Both of you, thanks very much indeed for joining us so early on this Thursday morning. Former Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini will be sentenced on the 1st of April. She was found guilty of perjury in the Johannesburg Magistrate's Court just yesterday.